So how did we get to this point in America? It all started when Americans elected a new president, a choice that will have consequences. As will the choices made in populating the next Congress. The first few days in office, President Biden signed over 90 executive orders abolishing all the policies that were proven effective based on numbers. U.S. Department of Homeland Security has released many illegal aliens into the United States and reiterated that terrorist and cartel organizations are taking advantage of the Biden administration's open border agenda. The directives starting with the halting of deportation the first day of the Biden administration, then moving on to the enforcement priorities under Secretary Mayorkas, have made it so that drug cartels know that the majority of people that they help to come across for one reason or another are not going to be the subject of deportation or enforcement actions, and ultimately it's going to help the cartels gain a greater foothold in the country. So who is crossing the border? Most encounters at the southwestern border have involved citizens of Mexico or the Northern Triangle nations of El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras. But in December 2023, 54% of encounters involved citizens of countries other than these four nations. Venezuelans, in particular, stand out. Nearly 47,000 migrant encounters in December 2023 involved citizens of Venezuela, up from about 6,000 a year earlier. There has also been a sharp increase in encounters with citizens of China, despite its distance from the U.S.-Mexico border. The Border Patrol reported nearly 6,000 encounters with Chinese citizens at the southwestern border in December 2023, up from around 900 a year earlier. FBI agent, others warn of Venezuelan gang entering into U.S. Customs and Border Protection is warning agents to be on the lookout for members of a notorious Venezuelan prison gang coming across the southern border just as the socialist country is refusing to take its citizens back. Intelligence Bulletin is revealing tattoos and identifiers for Tren de Aragua, a Venezuelan prison gang. Members of that gang have been entering the U.S. illegally through the southern border. The brother of the suspect in the killing of Georgia student Laken Riley has ties to the gang. Both the suspect and his brother are Venezuelans who entered the U.S. illegally. Federal authorities have been warning that the gang, also known as TDA and known for its violent turf wars as it expanded into other countries in South and Central America, is trying to establish itself in the U.S., where police are already linking it to organized crime. The FBI has also warned that the gang could team up with the bloodthirsty MS-13. Last month, two suspects in the assault of two NYPD officers were revealed to be members of TDA. Sources have expressed frustration that Venezuelan gang members are extremely difficult to deport because Venezuela is not taking them back. The gang capitalizes on its Venezuelan community for entry, primarily engaging in human smuggling and sex trafficking. The gang is involved in virtually every facet of organized crime in Venezuela, ranging from extortion to kidnapping, homicide, vehicle theft, drug trafficking, arms trafficking, human trafficking, and contraband. Venezuelan gang will unleash an unprecedented reign of terror throughout the USA. Among the myriad of detrimental impacts that come with President Joe Biden's reprehensible open border policies is the infiltration of Venezuela's largest criminal gang, which has battered American cities with its trademark of gruesome crimes. The syndicate is called Tren de Aragua and it is operating throughout the U.S., according to both local and federal law enforcement officials. A few months ago, a former cop was ambushed, robbed and murdered in Miami, Florida by members of the gang who left him dead in his sports utility vehicle with his hands and feet bound with tape. Last month, several of the migrants charged in the mob attack on two New York police officers in Times Square were identified as members of Tren de Aragua, according to federal immigration officials. Around the same time, the New York Police Department disclosed that the Venezuelan gang was responsible for dozens of brazen robberies throughout the city committed while riding mopeds. Tren de Aragua has been identified as a narco-terrorist organization by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and the State Department confirms that the gang's vast sex trafficking networks exploit women and children. Thanks to Biden's porous southern border, the criminal enterprise is terrorizing Americans and spreading quickly throughout the country. In a letter to Biden, the members of Congress from various states write that the designation is crucial to effectively mobilize national awareness as well as deploy necessary resources and sanctions that will help curb the escalating crime and violence threatening communities across the nation. How many more innocent victims will have to suffer before we fully recognize and address the grave threat Tren de Aragua gang members cause to the peace, stability, and the national security of our nation? The legislators asked the commander-in-chief, revealing that the gang is an invading criminal army from a prison in Venezuela that has spread its brutality and chaos to U.S. cities and small towns. If left unchecked, they will unleash an unprecedented reign of terror, mirroring the devastation it has already inflicted in communities throughout Central and South America, most prominently in Colombia, Chile, Ecuador, and Peru. It is clear that most state and local law enforcement agencies are not yet prepared to handle the magnitude of this grave threat. We cannot permit our cities to become battlegrounds for such organizations, nor can we allow our citizens to suffer at their hands. Heinous crimes committed by the Tren de Aragua, like the rapes of multiple children and the murders of retired police officer José Luis Sánchez Valera and nursing student Laken Riley, must stop. Under Biden, the U.S. has seen a shocking 7,300% spike in illegal immigrants from Venezuela, which is disturbing for reasons other than our newly relocated Tren de Aragua residents. Venezuela is run by a dictator with close ties to terrorists. Venezuela's government issues travel documents to individuals linked to terrorism and allows terrorists to operate with relative impunity. The country also has close ties with Iran and other notorious state sponsors of terrorism. Who are the Tren de Aragua? Tren de Aragua, which translates to Aragua train, began in 2012 among trade union members in the Aragua province of Venezuela who used the country's rail system for crime. Tren de Aragua's savage, bloody crimes are similar to MS-13, the violent street gang responsible for dozens of murders throughout the New York City area. Recently, a 62-year-old woman in Brooklyn was dragged down the sidewalk during a robbery. Cell phones are a hot commodity in these robberies, as crooks have found ways to use smartphones to hack into victims' bank accounts. A tech guy in the Bronx that was able to hack into the phone in less than 3 minutes and empty your bank accounts. That money got sent to 2 separate places, from Miami to Texas. Phones are then shipped to Colombia and Venezuela. You can break into one cell phone, and you could empty somebody's life savings. $10, $15, $20,000. You could then take that phone and sell it for $1,000 or $1,500, Fiore said. Venezuela's worst gangsters have crossed into the U.S. illegally and are unleashing chaos in Dallas, Chicago and Miami, with fearful residents saying they've had tires slashed, windows shot out in retribution for reporting them to cops. In Dallas, the Venezuelan neighborhood known as Villa Dallas has descended into mayhem. For months, once peaceful apartment complexes have been the scene of illegal street races, beatings, shootings and extortion attempts. Members of the notorious Tren de Aragua Venezuelan mob have also infiltrated the U.S. The leader of the gang headquartered inside Tocaron prison and known for trafficking drugs and women recently had broke out of the prison and is currently on the run. Law enforcement has not been able to locate Hector since he escaped prison. Stay tuned for part 2 of Migrants in America. Thanks for watching.